guys, it's Kristen here today with my review of Dead Mountain, the untold true story of the Dyatlov Pass incident by Donnie Ecker. Now, I heard about this book over at Ashley from Climb the Stacks channel, where she did a whole video talking about different climbing and hiking type books. Of all the books that she talked about, this is the one that really stuck out to me the most. Of course, it is nonfiction as it is a true story. It is about a group of 9 hikers who were going through the Russian mountains in 1959, and all of them were found dead, but they were all found in very mysterious circumstances where their tent had been ripped open, none of them had shoes on or proper winter clothing, and now over 50 years later, nobody has been able to solve this mystery. So the author, Donnie Ecker, who is a documentary filmmaker, decided to investigate, and he actually at one point goes to Russia to investigate and kind of retrace the steps of the climbers all the way up through the pass where they were found dead. I went into this book really just expecting to read about an amazing mystery, see if I could kind of figure it out myself, hear about a government cover-up, and just all of the intrigues behind it. But really what is so amazing, in my opinion, about this book is how well Donnie Ecker really humanizes the story, and I ended up just feeling really sad for what happened to these 9 hikers and what their family and friends had to deal with, especially through all of it, never finding out what actually happened to them. I love how right at the beginning he gives you a picture of all of the hikers so that you can really get a visual to what they looked like. There's actually 10 in this picture because one of them turned back early, and this is Dyatlov, who was the lead hiker, which is why the mountain pass has now been named after them. I also didn't expect that there were 2 female climbers. One of the few positives that came out of the Soviet Union was that they were a very egalitarian society and the women were really seen as equals on this hiking trip. So the story goes back and forth between the chapters following the author and his investigation and what he was uncovering, and then back to what we already know happened to the climbers themselves, all the way up to when they first left for the trip to when the investigators eventually found their bodies. This is a very famous case in Russia that a lot of people know about, obviously not so famous in other parts of the world, and so people have been speculating for these past 50 years about what could have happened, and the theories go anywhere from basic avalanches and things that happen to hikers to UFOs could have possibly done it, because it is just that mysterious, the circumstances that they were found under. And of course, the backdrop of the Soviet Union at the time is something that you cannot ignore. It is something that is of particular interest to me. I studied it in university and it's almost closer to an obsession. I don't think you need to have in-depth knowledge, but at least some kind of understanding of how the government worked at the time in being extremely totalitarian, non-transparent, which brought about a lot of the mysteries and people's mistrust of what happened in the investigation. And you also get a really good feel of what the hikers' lives would have been like living under the communist rule. All of them, except for one, were college students, and in that time, they were not allowed to travel outside of the Soviet Union. So instead of what modern college students do and go backpacking and travel great places, the only thing they could do was go on these hiking adventures into the mountains, and that's what they really got their excitement and enjoyment from. And something that I didn't know was that at the time in 1959, it was called the Great Thaw in the Soviet Union because it was after the time of Stalin and just when Khrushchev had taken over power, and people really thought that there was going to be more freedoms given to them, especially for the younger group, and that there really was going to be hope for them. Obviously, that did not come to fruition for many decades later, but they really had this time of excitement, almost like the Cultural Revolution in the Western world in the 1960s. That was how the students felt at this time. Going into this, I was a little bit confused about what the author would be investigating, not realizing that the hikers very much documented their whole trip. They took lots of pictures, they did journal entries, and so you get a really good grasp of the timeline of events, but also of their personalities and their little jokes between each other, which, as I said, was so amazing in this book, how humanizing it was towards them. The whole book is filled with all of these pictures and maps throughout it. The picture on the cover is actually thought to be the last picture that they took before they died. Of course, we are never going to know exactly what happened to them, but the author takes all of the main theories and kind of examines them and puts forth what he thinks is the most compelling one and the most reasonable. I really enjoyed reading this, and this is one of those times where I do wish the book was longer, but maybe that's my own preference and my own obsession with Soviet and Russian history that I could just read about it for days. But again, it was so interesting getting to know the climbers and so sad to know what their families would have gone through. In the end, I gave this book 4.5 stars out of 5. I think even people who don't necessarily enjoy nonfiction, you would enjoy this. There is such, of course, an amazing mystery, but then the human element, and you also learn a little bit about the Soviet history at the time, even things that I didn't know. So I would love to hear from anybody who has already read the book Dead Mountain before, or if you have any other suggestions about other climbing/hiking books, seeing as it seems to be an area of interest for me. Even though I'm not the most outdoorsy person, I do find adventure, survival, or in this case not survival stories very interesting. So please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!